So, guys, we're only 2 practices into Commanders training camp. Coming into this camp, all the attention was on Jayden Daniels, the new offensive scheme, and whether this wide receiver room had finally done enough to take the next step. But instead, the first 2 days have created a few major concerns that simply can't be ignored. And if this team truly wants to compete for a Super Bowl in coming seasons, these are the kinds of problems that have to be fixed before the regular season gets underway. Let me break down everything that's happened over the first 2 days of training camp, the biggest takeaways so far, and the one storyline that's quickly becoming impossible to ignore. What's up, Commanders Nation? Welcome to the NFL Playbook Commanders. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Alright, let's get into it because there's a lot to unpack here. First off, we got some injury news straight from head coach Dan Quinn himself. Starting center Nick Allegretti picked up a strained calf during the very first practice of camp. Now, the good news is it doesn't sound serious and he should be back on the field soon. But in the meantime, it's not the rookie stepping in, it's veteran Julian Good-Jones taking over as the first-team center. So that 6th-round pick, Matt Gulbin, he's going to have to keep waiting his turn, which honestly I think is the right call. You want your veteran holding things down while Allegretti heals up. And then we also found out that Treylon Burks was held out of practice today after that spinning, toe-tapping touchdown grab he made yesterday. Apparently, it's just some soreness in the foot, nothing serious, so hopefully he's back out there tomorrow. But I mean, look, when you start naming injuries this early in camp, it does make you a little uneasy, especially at a position group we're about to talk about in a minute. This is exactly the time of year where every little tweak and every little ding gets magnified because guys are getting back into football shape after a long offseason, and the coaching staff is still trying to figure out who they can actually count on once the games start to matter. Because honestly, guys, the biggest storyline out of these first 2 practices is the wide receiver room. And I hate to say it, but it did not look good. The consensus coming out of Ashburn is that the receivers are having a really tough time getting separation, and the defense has just been suffocating early on. Now there have been a couple of bright spots. Antonio Williams, the rookie out of Clemson, has flashed some real juice early. And Terry McLaurin, honestly, has been a little quiet, but I think that's more about the defense keying in on him because they know if they take him away, there's not a lot of proven answers behind him. Outside of those two, though, man, it's been rough. We got a touchdown from Dyami Brown. Luke McCaffrey had a score too, but he also dropped a potential touchdown in that same practice. So it's just been up and down, inconsistent, the kind of stuff that makes you nervous if you're a fan watching closely. Now, I want to be fair here because it is early. When a team installs a brand new offense, the defense is usually going to be ahead of the offense at this point in camp. That's just football. And Jayden Daniels himself is adjusting to a system that has him under center a lot more than he's ever been before. That's a totally different rhythm than operating out of the shotgun. He's got to learn how to turn his back to the defense on play action, take that mental picture at the top of his drop, and trust what he saw before he even turns around. That kind of stuff takes real time to develop. So, if you were expecting this offense to look crisp and polished on day one, I think that was probably an unrealistic expectation to have. But here's what worries me more than the quarterback's adjustment. It's the receiver room itself. Guys aren't separating enough, and when they do get open, too many drops, too many missed chances. And look, we knew coming into camp that one of the biggest questions was whether any of these young receivers were going to step up with Stefon Diggs still sitting out there unsigned. And through 2 practices, it's just disappointing to watch some of these guys who the team has actually invested real draft capital in, guys like Luke McCaffrey, guys like Jalen Lane, struggle to consistently win their reps and hang on to the football. Now, it's only 2 practices, I get that. Maybe the rest of the week looks different once guys settle in and get comfortable with the new system. Maybe this front office ends up making a move for Stefon Diggs. Or maybe they go a totally different direction and look at someone like Brandon Ayuk if that situation out west ever gets resolved one way or the other. We don't know yet. But I'll be honest with you, I don't feel great about where this receiver room currently stands, and you guys already know how I feel about Stefon Diggs. I think he takes this room from a D grade to a legitimate B just by walking through the door. Not just because your number 2 receiver spot instantly improves, but because it pushes Antonio Williams down to a true 3 role, where he's actually better suited than most of what's currently penciled in as WR3. And on top of that, it makes Terry McLaurin better too, because if you've got a former All-Pro and a real second option on the other side of him, defenses can't just live in his pocket all day. So if this is truly a win-now season for Washington, I'd be pushing hard to get that deal done. Okay, now let's shift over to some of the other stuff we saw out there, because it wasn't just the receivers struggling. There were multiple turnovers across the offense today. Rookie quarterback Ethan Kaliakmanis got picked off by Malik Spencer, and then Marcus Mariota threw one that Rasul Douglas returned all the way to the house to end practice. Not exactly the way you want to end training camp practice. So yeah, offense has to clean that up. You can't have multiple turnovers in a single practice, especially when you're already struggling to move the football consistently. It's great for the defense, don't get me wrong, but it's a little concerning if you're rooting for this offense to take a leap this year. Now, speaking of the defense, let's talk about the guy who's been getting a ton of buzz early in camp, and that's free agent signing Odafe Oweh off the edge. He's been getting after the quarterback early and showing off that raw power we heard so much about heading into the season. But I do want to pump the brakes a little bit here because remember, this team hasn't put the pads on yet. And until you actually strap them up and go full contact, it's really hard to evaluate offensive and defensive linemen the right way. Linemen just can't play with the same aggression and shells, so I'm going to hold off on any big declarations about the line play until we actually see these guys in pads and hitting for real. It's easy to get excited watching highlight clips from these early practices, but the version of football we're seeing right now isn't the version we'll be watching come September. We'll get a much clearer read on this group once the hitting actually starts. Alright, let's touch on special teams for a second, because there's a real battle brewing at kicker. Both Drew Stevens and Jake Moody hit all 6 of their kicks today, so both guys are pushing hard for that job right now. Honestly, whoever wins it is probably going to be pretty solid either way. I'd say Jake Moody has a slight edge just because he's the incumbent, and he was fairly consistent last season for this team. Drew Stevens comes in as an undrafted guy with a big leg, but his accuracy wasn't always the most consistent back at Iowa. I think this one is really going to come down to the preseason games, when these guys are actually kicking inside a stadium with real pressure on the line. Preseason kicks off in a couple weeks, so we won't have to wait long to get a real look at that competition play out. Now, to wrap things up here, let's circle back to the defense as a whole, because honestly, that side of the ball has dominated the first 2 days of camp. And as long as this front office doesn't bring back any more weapons for Jayden Daniels, whether that's re-signing Treylon Burks long-term or going out and getting Stephon Diggs, I think we should expect this defense to keep winning these practices for a while longer. And honestly, I'm genuinely excited about this defensive scheme because Durante Jones is bringing in this aggressive, blitz-heavy style that can make an average unit look a lot better than it actually is on paper. All that pressure up front takes stress off the back end and gives the defensive backs a chance to make plays because quarterbacks are getting rid of the ball faster than usual against this scheme. The last 2 years, we've watched an offense try to carry a defense that just was not good enough, especially last season. But this year, with this new scheme installed, there's a real chance the defense becomes the group that carries the offense early on, especially if Jayden Daniels is still working through some growing pains in this new system, and if the receiver room continues to be a question mark heading into the regular season. Because let's be real, guys, this schedule to open the year is absolutely brutal. So if this defense can hold things together early while the offense figures itself out, that could genuinely be the difference between a promising season and a really frustrating one for this franchise. At the end of the day, it's way too early to panic, but too early to look away too. 2 practices isn't a full body of work, and pads haven't even gone on yet. But if this receiver room doesn't show more life once things ramp up and the front office doesn't address it before the season starts, that's the kind of thing that quietly sinks a season before it even begins. I'll be watching this one closely over the next few weeks because how it plays out could shape this entire offense heading into September. Alright, that's going to do it for me on this one. I'll be back with more updates as camp continues, so stay tuned. Appreciate every one of you for watching, and until next time, Commanders Nation, let's go get it.